on this edition for Saturday, February 13th.
And he is hereby acquitted of the charge in said article.
The second impeachment trial of former President Donald Trump draws to an end, with the U.S. Senate voting for acquittal. And in our signature segment, the debate over mandated hazard pay for workers on the front lines of the coronavirus pandemic. Next on PBS NewsHour Weekend.
PBS NewsHour Weekend is made possible by Sue and Edgar Wachenheim III, the Anderson Family Fund, Bernard and Denise Schwartz, the Cheryl and Philip Milstein family, Barbara Hope Zuckerberg, the Leonard and Norma Chlorfine Foundation, the Peter G. Peterson and Joan Gantz Cooney Fund. We try to live in the moment to not miss what's right in front of us. At Mutual of America, we believe taking care of tomorrow can help you make the most of today. Mutual of America Financial Group, retirement services and investments.
For 25 years, Consumer Cellular's goal has been to provide wireless service that helps people communicate and connect. We offer a variety of no-contract plans, and our U.S.-based customer service team can help find one that fits you. To learn more, visit consumercellular.tv.
Additional support has been provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. The Senate voted today to acquit former President Donald Trump on one article of impeachment. The charge was that he incited insurrection, causing a mob to attack the U.S. Capitol on January 6th.
That the respondent, Donald John Trump, former President of the United States, is not guilty as charged in the article of impeachment.
57 senators voted guilty and 43 not guilty, but two-thirds of the Senate, 67 votes, was needed to convict. 7 Republicans joined the Senate's 50 Democrats in voting guilty. After the vote, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell said he voted not guilty in part because Mr. Trump is no longer in office, but he strongly condemned the former president's words and actions on January 6th.
There's no question, none, that President Trump is practically and morally responsible for provoking the events of the day. No question about it. The people who stormed this building believed they were acting on the wishes and instructions of their president.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer had harsh words for the 43 Republicans who voted to acquit.
Look at what Republicans have been forced to defend. Look at what Republicans have chosen to forgive.
The impeachment trial was expected to go quickly to closing arguments when it began this morning, but within minutes of the 10 a.m. start, the House managers prosecuting the former president asked to call Republican Representative Jaime Herrera Beutler as a witness.
We believe we've proven our case. But last night, Congresswoman Jaime Herrera Beutler of Washington State issued a statement confirming that in the middle of the insurrection, when House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy called the president to beg for help, President Trump responded, and I quote, "Well, Kevin, I guess these people are more upset about the election than you are."
The request set off a furious response from Mr. Trump's attorneys.
Thank you. I'm going to need at least over 100 depositions, not just one. The real issue is incitement. They put into their case over 100 witnesses, people who have been charged with crimes by the federal government. And each one of those, they said that Mr. Trump was a co-conspirator with. That's not true. But I have the right to defend that.
The motion is agreed to by a vote of 55 to 45.
Then, voting 55 to 45, 5 Republicans joined all 50 Democrats. The Senate approved calling witnesses, throwing the proceedings into a confusing delay, and then an hours-long recess. On return, there was a deal. There would be no witnesses. The president's lawyers agreed to allow Representative Herrera Beutler's statement into the record. The House managers agreed not to call witnesses. And shortly before 1 p.m., up to 4 hours of closing arguments got underway.
The cold, hard truth is that what happened on January 6th can happen again. I fear, like many of you do, that the violence we saw on that terrible day may be just the beginning. We've shown you the ongoing risks, the extremist groups who grow more emboldened every day. Senators, this cannot be the beginning. It can't be the new normal. It has to be the end. And that decision is in your hands.
The Senate does not have to go down this dark path of enmity and division. You do not have to indulge the impeachment lust, the dishonesty, and the hypocrisy. It is time to bring this unconstitutional political theater to an end.
Former President Trump issued a statement after the vote, thanking his lawyers and repeating his claim that the impeachment was, quote, yet another phase of the greatest witch hunt in the history of our country. For more analysis on today's impeachment vote, I was joined by Ryan Goodman, the co-editor of the Just Security blog, as well as the law school at NYU. Ryan, any surprises in today's vote?
There were a couple of surprises for sure. The fact that we got to 7 Senate Republicans is significant. Going into this, I think most would have expected around 5. And the other very surprising, in a sense, vote, but really statement was from the Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. Though he voted to acquit, the statement in many respects is even stronger in its condemnation of President Trump than the statement by Senator Schumer.
And then Mitch McConnell kind of turned it back onto the technicalities and justified why he voted the way he did. Now, do you think that leaves an opening for the House or the Senate to come up with some sort of a joint resolution that prevents Donald Trump from ever taking office again?
I think McConnell left that door wide open. In fact, there's even a line in his statement that appears to allude to potential criminal liability on the part of President Trump. So he says that the president is not free of the concerns and free of accountability. And Congress itself has a mechanism, which is the 14th Amendment, to bar an individual who has sworn an oath to the Constitution, but has given aid and comfort to an insurrection, to bar that person from serving in public office again. So I think it does actually put that much more in play than we could have otherwise imagined before Mitch McConnell's statement.
There was also a moment today, or about an hour and a half, 2 hours, where we were unsure whether witnesses were going to be called into this process. At the end, they were not. But why did that matter?
So that was a strange set of events that took place this morning, where we even had a resolution adopted by the Senate chamber for witnesses, and then a very quick reversal and a standing down so that there would be no more witnesses called, or no witnesses called at all. And that was a sharp change in the way in which the trial was handled, because we could now be living in a universe in which it would be phase 2 of the impeachment trial, and the American public would have gotten the opportunity to hear live testimony from actual witnesses. And that didn't happen in the end. So at the end of the day, it ended up being what most expected, which was no witnesses, but it certainly raised expectations and then dashed a lot of people's expectations, or people on the reverse side dashed their concerns and then raised their concerns. So it was a very bizarre, topsy-turvy morning.
Was the entire exercise worth it, in terms of that the vote was almost predestined? We had a good idea that we weren't going to get to the 66 Senate threshold that was necessary to find the president guilty. Were the last couple of weeks good for the country, for just the Democratic Party?
I think that's a great question. So the way I see it is that I think it was very good for the country in that we got the record and the events put on trial, and we have a pretty powerful statement by the Senate, which is a strong bipartisan statement on the part of the Senate that President Trump is guilty as charged for inciting an insurrection in our country. And that will be understood now in history. And another good aspect, I believe, of the trial is another way in which we can defeat the big lie, which is understood as the big lie, the idea that the election was stolen from President Trump. And that's an important, highly important part of public education. So that was presented by the House managers, and the president's lawyers did not try to contest that. And in fact, we now have important public statements from people like Leader McConnell saying that the big lie was just that, a big lie, a true conspiracy perpetrated against many of Trump's supporters by President Trump. And I think that's very important for our country. And yes, Mitch McConnell had made a similar statement before, but this is a solemn moment and a speech that he'll be remembered for, and a very powerful speech for history.
Ryan Goodman, co-editor-in-chief of the Just Security blog and law school professor at NYU. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
For more on today's impeachment hearing and the latest international and national news, visit pbs.org/newshour. While the rollout of COVID-19 vaccinations broadens across the country, the hazards for frontline workers continue. Early in the pandemic, many large companies increased pay for essential workers, but many of those raises have expired. Now, several cities across California and Seattle, Washington have passed mandatory hazard pay for employees at some large groceries and food retailers. It's a move that is gaining traction, but there have also been consequences. NewsHour Weekend's Laura Fong has the story.
40 hours a week, Eric Cortez is a food clerk at this Ralph's grocery store in Long Beach. Cortez has worked for Ralph's, a large supermarket chain in Southern California, for 14 years and throughout the COVID-19 crisis.
From day one, been working since day one throughout the pandemic. Oh, it's been rewarding in a sense because, at the end of the day, we look at our customers rely on us.
Cortez, who lives with his father, Antonio Curtis, said there have been several COVID-19 scares among coworkers.
We did have 3 members, who did come down with it. Thank God they did recover. At the same time, like I said, I was worried about, it's me and my 78-year-old dad. So I was just thinking, I don't want to bring home anything to him.
Like many large companies across the country, Ralph's parent company, Kroger, gave workers a hazard pay raise of $2 an hour at the end of March, but stopped by mid-May, before the pandemic came into full swing.
What was your reaction when you heard that they stopped the hazard pay?
Kind of like a slap in the face because they were calling us heroes. They actually called it hero pay. So if we are heroes, we should be rewarded accordingly.
And with that, we'll do a roll call vote.
Last month, the Long Beach City Council, pointing to large chains not doing enough, passed a hazard pay ordinance of $4 per hour for grocery store employees. The law went into effect immediately for 120 days and targeted companies with more than 300 workers nationwide and more than 15 employees per store. In the weeks since the Long Beach ordinance went into effect, other city councils in California, Oakland, Montebello, San Jose, Los Angeles, Irvine, and Seattle, Washington, have passed similar laws mandating temporary pay raises of $3 to $5 per hour for grocery store workers. After the Seattle law was adopted, Trader Joe's announced a $4 per hour thank you premium, an increase from $2 for its stores nationwide. But in Long Beach this month, Kroger announced that 2 of its stores, a Ralph's and a Food 4 Less, will begin to close in April.
You can see.
Cortez and his co-workers received letters from the company, which cited the ordinance as part of the reason.
This is to advise you of our company's decision to close and permanently terminate the entirety of the operations for businesses and economic reasons, including the economic costs mandated by the Long Beach ordinance, requiring an increase in employee wages $4 an hour.
Cortez and his union's leadership, the United Food and Commercial Workers, or UFCW, view the closures as a warning to other cities considering hazard pay mandates.
It was announced as retaliatory action.
Andrea Zinder is the president of UFCW Local 324 in South Los Angeles and Orange counties.
Now, these stores were making money. Both of the stores that they've slated to close have had their sales increase at approximately 30% during the pandemic versus the same period last year. Our members are working harder than ever. They are out there taking risks, and then they get slapped in the face when notice that their stores are going to close.
It sets off a series of unintended consequences.
Ron Fong is president and CEO of the California Grocers Association, which represents 3,000 retail grocery stores in the state, and has sued Long Beach, Oakland, and other cities where hazard pay mandates were passed.
It's really unprecedented what the local city ordinances are asking us to do, and that's to enact a $4 or in Oakland's case, a $5 per hour raise. We're going to have to pass on these new expenses on to customers.
Fong said a California Grocers Association Commission study estimated that a $5 per hour hazard pay would increase a typical family of four's grocery bill by $400 a year.
Do you think that potentially a smaller hazard pay increase would have been tolerable or could be tolerable in these situations?
What we tried to tell the city councils is that our grocery stores have been providing heroes pay or hazard pay at their own pace. $4 on an average wage amounts to about a 30% raise, which is unreasonable on any business when you say, okay, your costs are going to go up 30%. But in our own way, we've been doing $1 and $2. A lot of our regional chains are continuing to do that and have not stopped.
The UFCW, which is the union that represents these workers, they characterize the closures as a retaliatory action and have pointed to the profits of Kroger's over the past year as more than enough to cover these hazard pay raises.
You know, I'm not going to speak to Kroger and Ralph's because, you know, we're not owners and we don't know their real finances. So I know they like to talk about the bigger parent company that has done so well. But those two stores obviously were not doing well enough where they could sustain a $4 increase per employee and made the difficult choice to close.
They're closing a month before it's supposed to actually stop.
With his store slated to close in 2 months, Cortez is hoping he can be reassigned to another Ralph's, but he still thinks that hazard pay is necessary for all grocery workers.
What sort of difference does that extra $4 an hour make for you?
Well, it makes a big difference. You know, get ahead on the bills, put a little bit more food in the house, you know, just put a little bit more in your savings and whatnot. And at the end of the day, you know, it just shows me as a worker that we are appreciated for working so hard and risking our health and safety, not just ours, but our families as well.
For more on hazard pay for workers on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic, I recently spoke with Molly Kinder from the Brookings Institution.
So grocery store workers are among the quintessential examples of essential workers who have been out on the COVID-19 front line throughout the pandemic. They are at risk of contracting COVID and potentially passing it back to their family, and they earn very low wages typically. So grocery workers on average make about $11.50 an hour nationwide.
So when you look around the country, what are some cities doing to try to, well, make up for this? I mean, if they institute laws that try to make grocery store chains pay more, is it working?
So the reason I think that you're seeing this momentum on the West Coast of city and county governments passing these mandates requiring some of the large grocery chains to pay hazard pay is because, frankly, a lot of them are not voluntarily doing so on their own. So despite the fact that at Brookings, we documented that the major grocery chains have earned enormous profits during the pandemic, and largely because of the pandemic, they typically ended their hazard pay in the spring and summer. Since then, the pandemic has grown worse. We are still not yet at a place where grocery workers can go to work and not risk their lives and their families' lives. And despite these big profits, they are not typically passing that extra wealth onto their workers in the form of hazard pay. So some city and county governments are stepping up to say, we're going to require you to do so.
So what are companies, corporations that are profiting during the pandemic? What are they doing with that cash if they're not passing it on to their workers?
So if you look at the top 3 grocery providers in the country, Walmart, Kroger, and Albertson, overall, if you look at their profits in the first 3 quarters of 2020 compared to the previous year, they've almost doubled overall. So Kroger, for instance, has doubled its profits. It's made an extra $1.3 billion. And this is even after paying all the costs for cleaning and safety and hazard pay. They made an extra $1.3 billion. And what's striking is they haven't given any hazard pay since May. What they have done with some of that profit is they have spent upwards of $1 billion repurchasing their stock.
Which makes it go up.
Which makes their rights, and that is going to benefit their shareholders. It doesn't necessarily benefit the workers who are every day during their shifts risking their health for very low wages. Kroger nationally, a typical cashier might make around $10 an hour. And the Kroger workers I've interviewed have a sense that, these Kroger called us a hero. They initially offered us this $2 an hour hero pay. That ended in May. We know that the profits have been up a lot since the previous year. Why are we not seeing some of that? So I think some of Kroger's decisions in terms of not carrying on the hazard pay and seeing these big profits and choosing to prioritize shareholders is quite striking.
So is there any truth to, let's say it's not the Krogers or the Amazons or the Walmarts, other grocery chains out there saying, you know what, if you require us to do this, then we're going to have to pass that cost on to customers because we don't have enough money in the bank to do both?
I think there's a really reasonable debate that can be had about what's the right level of hazard pay that strikes a balance between the company's profits and how much they can afford, which workers should be included in those mandates. I think some of those details are fair game for debate. I don't think it's a fair assessment to say that these large, big retail and grocery chains do not have resources to compensate their workers extra. That simply is just not verified in the data. And I think there's a question of what should profit look like in a pandemic when it's enabled by work, very low wage work that is so risky. These companies went into the pandemic making profit, but those profit levels have gone up significantly. Should we expect as a society that they're going to pass more of that to their workers? And if they choose not to, is there a place for government to step in and say, you need to?
Molly Kindera-Brookings, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
This is PBS NewsHour Weekend, Saturday.
Protests in Myanmar continued for the 8th day, with thousands of demonstrators taking to the streets in several cities. The military junta, which took control of the country on February 1st, announced changes in the laws protecting the privacy and security of its citizens. The new laws will allow for detainment longer than 24 hours and searches of private property without court orders. The junta also called on civil servants to end their boycott and return to work, saying, quote, actions could be taken against those who do not comply. The United Nations Human Rights Office said Friday that 350 people have been arrested in the country since the coup began. In Thailand today, demonstrators gathered at a monument to democracy in Bangkok to call for the repeal of a law against insulting the monarchy. The demonstrators draped the monument in red cloth to symbolize the blood of fighters for democracy.
Our message is that no matter what, don't try to get in our way towards democracy, and don't try to obstruct us holding activities at the Democracy Monument.
Earlier this week, hundreds protested in response to the arrest of 4 pro-democracy leaders who've been charged with insulting the monarchy. Last year, mass protests took place calling for the prime minister to step down and calling for reform to the monarchy. A police spokesperson said at least 7 people were arrested when clashes broke out later in the day. Mario Draghi, the former president of the European Central Bank, was sworn in today as the new Prime Minister of Italy. Outgoing Premier Giuseppe Conte handed over a small bell used to signal the beginning of cabinet meetings in a ceremony marking the handover of power. Conte's governing coalition collapsed as he lost support for his handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. That's all for this edition of PBS NewsHour Weekend. For the latest news updates, visit pbs.org/newshour. I'm Hari Srinivasan. Thanks for watching. Stay healthy and have a good night.
PBS NewsHour Weekend is made possible by Sue and Edgar Wachenheim III, the Anderson Family Fund, Bernard and Denise Schwartz, the Cheryl and Philip Milstein family, Barbara Hope Zuckerberg, the Leonard and Norma Clorfine Foundation, the Peter G. Peterson and Joan Gantz Cooney Fund. We try to live in the moment to not miss what's right in front of us. At Mutual of America, we believe taking care of tomorrow can help you make the most of today. Mutual of America Financial Group, retirement services and investments. Additional support has been provided by Consumer Cellular and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
You're watching PBS.